I was thinking that maybe I should trip as I came up here, because there are studies that show that the first time you meet somebody or you're presenting to a group, if you kind of drop something or trip a little bit, that you evoke a moment of empathy and they kind of like you more. So hopefully maybe I'll trip on the way down or something, so it'll all happen okay that way. It's funny because Drew came over the other day and I went through my presentation with him, and he said, oh, well, you know, yeah, it's really good. Do you have any personal stories to tell? Because I really didn't have any personal stories in this. So basically I've trashed my entire presentation, and I've got a whole new presentation here now for you. And, you know, what's changed is that it's really hard, if you've been asked to do a talk on empathy, to come up and fill it with stories about yourself. And to make it, you know, personal. I'm not a first aid worker, I'm not a missionary, I don't even volunteer at food shelters. So telling personal stories seems, well, fairly narcissistic. Narcissism and empathy are two really opposite types of emotions and different situations. So narcissism is the idea of this grandiose importance and the excessive interest in yourself. It's the selfie world. It's a world of all selfies all day long. Empathy is the opposite. It's the ability to sense what other people's emotions, and coupled with the ability to imagine what they must be feeling, what they must be going through at that moment. Narcissists are generally incapable of empathy. Everything in their lives reflects back upon them. So when I first spoke with the Creative Mornings group, I was very interested in this topic of empathy for two different reasons. One of them I'll get to in a moment, but the other one was that my mother was diagnosed, she's passed away now, but my mother was diagnosed with narcissist personality disorder, which is a real thing, unfortunately, although people who are diagnosed with it won't admit it. Or they won't believe the thing. So NPD is the inflated sense of your importance and the ability to focus on the feelings of others. So my mother's ongoing complaint through her later years is that my sisters and I, who are here, that we had no empathy for her. And she always would say that. Now that's ironic, or one could say that it's absolutely accurate and correct coming from a narcissist, because basically it's saying you don't care about me as much as you should. And so people with this disorder get upset if they don't think that they're the primary importance in anyone's life. For example, the only gift that I ever gave to my mom that she did not want to return was a photo album filled with photos of herself. Pre-selfie days. So when I was given the opportunity to do this talk, I called my sisters and I said, ha, this will show her, won't it? So my mom passed away 4 years ago, and the softening of time and of distance has sort of allowed me to see her as more of a wounded lion than as a rabid bear. And narcissists often hide a very deep sense of insecurity, which I suppose we would expect. So I come from a real family of fixers, right? We make this mistake all the time, or accurately, that all we need to do is just roll up our sleeves and work hard and we can fix any problem. So my sisters and I felt that my mom, who also suffered from depression in her late lives, that, you know, we had a lot of problems telling her, we would tell her, all right, we can fix this problem. You gotta get out and exercise, you gotta meet more people, you gotta go, you know, volunteer, all sorts of different things. So the idea of saying, how can I be a fixer? How can I have this basic nature of being a fixer and yet be an empathetic person? And it's funny how distance and time can soften our own feelings of empathy. So when we think about that, it's saying I'm going to gloss over details or different things that I may not fully connect with. So just like I fuzzed out some things about my mom that used to make me push back against her, it's always sort of odd or strange when people can get more outraged about Cecil the Lion than about Eric Brown. And you'll know that his last words, and maybe this will help you recognize him, were when he was killed, strangulated, and chokehold by the police, was "I can't breathe." And it's now a rallying cry of the Black Lives Matter movement. If you go to any of the things, that's one of the things that you'll chant in that. So it can also be a lot easier to empathize with someone from a very great distance, or someone who you really see their pain. It's very obvious what's going on. It's a lot harder when something becomes part of your daily life and you don't really sort of see it. Empathy can also be lost or suppressed in different ways with situations of power and authority. There were a couple of really iconic studies and labs in the late 60s, early 70s that were about power, that the people would lose their sense of empathy or shut it down if they were being told by an authority figure to do something that fought against their own personal beliefs and morals. And also in context, there was another study that split out a group of students into prisoners and guards and put them into a mock situation. Well, after 6 days, the results were so disastrous that they had to shut down the entire study because within that amount of time, the power figures, the people in power there was so much sort of psychological abuse going on. There was so much psychological abuse among the prisoners. So these types of things can shut down our own sense of empathy in the world. The other issue, of course, is that there's a lot of times in which you can't see what's happening in somebody else's life. And what these say is that some of these are really good, where it says, just got promoted, just won the lottery. Some of these other ones are, here's a vet with PSTD. Here's somebody whose wife has cancer. Here's somebody who is worried that they're about to lose their job. We can't always see these things, and that is, in my job, that's something that is not always the case. I have a job that's given me this very unique view into personal pain and suffering. So this is the type of thing that people go and they type into a search engine. And in my job, I am dealing with search engines every single day. I am looking all the time at what people are typing in. 18,000 people a month go to Google and they type in how to commit suicide. When I first started working with clients on Google AdWords, it was in about 2003, and my first client was Hazelden Treatment Center. And Thanksgiving night, I watched live as these searches came in. And it was incredibly moving for me and made me feel this very deep change in myself about understanding the pain that people were going through on what was supposed to be a really happy family event evening, and yet 9,000, almost 10,000 people a month search for signs of alcoholism. So empathy is a really private thing. Grief, sadness, all of these are profoundly personal emotions. And it can be really hard to ask people questions. And you don't know, a lot of times people don't want to share these things, or they're overwhelmed with what's happening in their lives at any given moment. They don't know, sometimes they don't even know what they're thinking or feeling. We also, as people who want to care, we can be very uncomfortable. We may feel that we're being intrusive, or we don't know how to carry on a conversation with somebody who is in a lot of pain, or we're worried that our kindness will be rebuffed in some way. And so, we can feel uncomfortable about this idea of a conversation. And so I've often found that just being open and receptive to somebody and just a really small entree and waiting to see what somebody is ready to share with you, what they're ready to say. Leslie Jamison wrote a book called The Empathy Exams, and in it she says, it's a series of essays, and in it she says empathy isn't just asking the questions, it's asking the questions that need to be listened to. And Sheryl Sandberg also wrote really beautifully on this entire topic this summer after her husband Dave Goldberg died. So I'm going to paraphrase a couple of things from both of them here. So it's really when you are thinking about how you can be empathetic and various things, is think about what the right response might be. So if somebody has terminal cancer, they don't want assurance about, hey, it's going to be okay, because it's not. They are dying. They have terminal cancer. But if they're going in for a risky surgery, a person may want assurance, not empathy. As Ms. Jamison says in her book, I needed to look at him, meaning her doctor, and see the opposite of my fear, not its echo. So Sheryl Sandberg says that real empathy is sometimes not insisting that it will be okay, but acknowledging that it's not. It's trying to be a receptacle and a resource without being a drain. So Ms. Sandberg, one of her suggestions that really resonated with me really highly is to say, how are you today? Not how are you, because the whole answer about how are you might be, you know what, I'm overwhelmingly sad right now. But to say, how are you doing today? How are you making it through this one day? So what are some other ways that we can think about how to be more empathetic and how to fight off all of the things around us that might be trying to tamp it down? Well, one of the main things is to reject groupthink. So standing up with your own personal beliefs against something that you think is wrong and saying no or saying yes when everybody else is saying something different. So one of the things that's sort of interesting with empathy is that hyper-affiliation with a group is one of the main things that can kill empathy. And so a recent example of a suicide bomber is that in her day job, she was actually an EMT. And she was praised for her way and her compassionate way that she dealt with medical traumas on that. But her personal feelings were drowned out because of that affiliation. The one thing is, of course, if you're a rabid Vikings fan, you may still cheer when the Packers lose on that. Another really important thing is what we've learned from Elie Wiesel, which is his quote, the opposite of love is not hate, but indifference. So one of the first steps is to take the time and open up and look around us. We can realize that there are personal lives and stories that are being played out everywhere all the time around us. There's huge things like the Syrian refugee crisis, and there's really small things like maybe a neighbor's parent is sick and they're struggling with that. It's a lot easier if you have a community, and that can be a community on social media, it can be a community in a house of worship, or some other group that you are part of. I also find that it's really important to go ahead and share your own personal stories and to share what's going on in your life, because it helps other people. Your bravery in doing that helps other people be able to do the same thing. So I'm on a cocktail of antidepressants, and I've been on them for years. And I find that sometimes I'm in situations with people where they are talking disparagingly about being on antidepressants. And I have at times have hidden the fact that I am because of that. I felt ashamed. I felt that it's going to show that I'm a weaker person. But I think it's really important to talk about these things openly. And I also find it's incredibly brave when a couple of my friends on social media have spoken really openly about depression and about their struggles and what they're struggling with. Another thing that you can do is just acknowledge that something exists. Just acknowledge, here's my little humor moment, just acknowledge that something may be a real thing. There is a disease called Morgellons, and it's a very controversial and poorly understood condition. So what it is that there's unusual thread-like fibers under your skin, and a patient may feel that something is crawling, biting, or stinging them all the time. Now, this is completely a controversial disease. It has not been accepted by the medical community. And some people say it actually is a real physical illness, and a lot of people say it's a delusional paratitosis. So I think that a lot of what the people who suffer from Morgellons want, even before treatment, is just acknowledgement that they're not crazy, that they actually do have a real disease that is, dramatically impacting their lives. So, except maybe when you've given a gift of a book of photos of somebody to themselves, have you ever had that real rush of excitement and joy that comes when you find that perfect gift for somebody? Oh, I am so excited because I have the perfect gift for this person. And think about that happiness that you are feeling. A lot of studies have shown that giving, that volunteering light up the areas in your brain that are similar to endorphins, to happiness, to joy. Even the thought of giving can create this cascade of pleasure inside your system. And they also show that companies that have volunteerism and that focus on different causes will have higher morale and retention rates on that. So maybe you're a fixer. Maybe you feel, I've got to sit down, what I do is I fix things. So you could possibly start an agency on that. So the primary value of my company, we have a series of values that we stick to. It's very, very important. The primary value is to put the client first, and good things will follow. So it's basically saying we need to be empathetic to our clients on a very deep level. Okay, so I'm a fixer, right? So how do I take that into being empathetic? Well, I can listen to all of my clients' issues. I can figure out a solution that works for them, and by gum, with a little elbow grease, I'm gonna make it work on that. So have you ever heard the term, they can read a room? So we always look for people at my agency who we say that person can really read a room. And that means that they are going in there and they are highly attuned to what they are seeing around them. They are listening very carefully. They are relating what they've heard and saying it back to their client. They're reading facial expressions. They're listening to what the pushback might be, and they're finding a solution that works for everybody. And that is so incredibly important and deep, and that is when you become a truly great communicator or a truly great agency person, is when you can find that middle ground there. We had one of our employees who, we don't really go on client site, but she was on client site for about 3 months. And she came back and she wrote this beautiful piece that you can find on our blog. And it was all about walking in the client's shoes and really for the first time understanding everything that they were going through. And it was such a moving piece on that. And then in the very early days of my agency, we had a contractor, and he sent out this email to all of us within the company, and the email was called The 10 Different Types of Clients, and it was very snarky, and it was very stereotypical. It had all sorts of things like that, and he never worked for us again, because I really feel that it's so incredibly important. My agency, we've grown well, right? We decided to go into search engine marketing, right? In the last 10 years, 15 years, in which this has just exploded as a thing. So we're in this environment all the time of saying, wow, this is gonna go great. Everything is coming up roses. We're growing like crazy. We have these amazing results. And it's so important for us to remember that that is not happening all the time for our clients. Even if our results are awesome for them, they have other things that they have to produce and live in an environment, and they can be under a huge amount of stress. We have clients we've done amazing jobs for who have been laid off by their companies. So we can't assume that what we're doing is their world. Otherwise, we become incredibly narcissistic. And then the other thing is that my agency has been successful, right? So Tess in the beginning mentioned this thing with the ESOP on that. And it was just me, but there's 50 of us now. We have 60 great clients. We're gonna book about $7.5 million this year. And so I realized that the agency that was named Nina Hale was really not about Nina. It was about all of these amazing people who were doing it. So what I did is I turned the company into an employee-owned company. So in effect, I'm giving the company to the employees, and every year that they're there, they become more and more owners of the company on there. So I just want to sort of sum up with a couple of little things. One is, please don't laugh at accident videos. My God, I hate accident videos so much. I don't know why people laugh at them. They're so evil. Ugh, so please don't. You don't know the story of people around you. You really don't. You don't know what's going on. So ask the questions that need to be listened to. Ask, how are you today? And be brave. Stand up. Talk about your own, what is going on in your own life, so other people have the bravery so that they can do that, because someone right next to you wants to help. Thank you so much. I really loved being here.